My name is Rachel. I'm 34. I moved into a small rental house with my son Jamie last year after I finally left my ex-husband. I wanted peace. I wanted somewhere quiet to give my boy a real chance at feeling safe again. I didn't know this house came with something else. It was a modest place at the edge of a small town in Illinois. 2 bedrooms, creaky floors, and a narrow hallway that always felt colder than the rest of the house. The landlord told me an older woman had lived there alone for years before passing away in her sleep. It didn't seem strange at first, just a little sad. But things started happening fast. It began with Jamie. He came into my room one night holding his blanket, his little face pale. "Mommy," he whispered, "there's someone knocking in the hallway." I blinked at him. "You mean outside?" "No," he said, "inside." He told me it happened around midnight. 3 soft knocks, right on the wall next to his door. When he opened it, no one was there. I brushed it off as a dream, tucked him in beside me, and promised the house was safe. But I woke up a few nights later to the sound of him talking in the hallway. I got up and saw him standing in the dark, staring at the wall, whispering. "Jamie?" I called out. He looked back at me with wide eyes. "Shh," he whispered. "She's knocking again." I pulled him into my arms and brought him back to bed. I asked who she was, and he just said, "The knocking lady." That night I didn't sleep. I sat in bed with the lights on, and at 3:08 a.m. I heard it. Knock, 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 clear as day. On the hallway wall. It didn't sound like the house settling. It wasn't the pipes. It was deliberate, a slow rhythm that made the hairs on my neck stand straight up. I waited. Nothing else happened. But from that night on, it became a pattern. Always between 3:05 and 3:15 a.m., every few nights. 3 knocks. Then silence. I even tried sleeping with a baby monitor in Jamie's room, thinking I'd catch something. What I heard instead still plays in my nightmares. One night after the knocking, I heard Jamie whisper, "You can't come in unless Mommy lets you." I ran in, panicking. He was still asleep. But the closet door was wide open, and Jamie never touches that closet. He's always been afraid of it. I started doing research. I found old obituaries. Turns out the woman who lived here before, her name was Dorothy Miller, had gone missing for 4 days before her body was discovered inside that house. The cause of death? Unknown. No wounds, no signs of trauma. But according to police reports, I managed to pull through a FOIA request. The neighbor who found her said they knocked on her door for 2 days straight and never got a response. They even wrote in the statement, "We kept knocking. Thought we heard someone knock back once. But no one ever answered." That stuck with me, because now I think Dorothy never left, and she doesn't knock to come in. She knocks to ask permission. One night the knocks changed. It wasn't 3 anymore. It was 2 knocks, then a pause, and then Jamie's voice. "Knock, knock, Mommy." Except he wasn't awake. He was lying in bed, eyes closed, breathing slow. Something was mimicking him. I moved out within 2 days. Jamie hasn't talked about the knocking lady since, and I've never heard it in our new apartment. But some nights I wake up at 3:08 a.m. and my phone screen has a weird notification. Just the word, knock. No sender, no message history, and once I answered it. The voice was Jamie's, but it didn't sound alive. It was hollow, glitching. Like a recording breaking apart. It just said, "You let her in." My name's Lily, I'm 19. Last fall, I moved back into my childhood home for a couple weeks while my parents traveled overseas. I figured I'd have the place to myself. Just me, the dog, and a break from dorm food. I didn't expect to relive something I thought I imagined as a kid. something that started with a walkie-talkie. When I was little, my parents got me a set of blue walkie-talkies for my 8th birthday. You know, the cheap kind with the belt clip and the bright buttons. The first night I used them, I was playing alone in the living room. My parents were upstairs, and I remember turning one walkie on and saying, "This is Lily, anyone out there?" A second later, the other walkie buzzed and a voice replied, "Hi, Lily." But it wasn't my parents. It wasn't anyone I recognized. It was a kid's voice, but wrong. Flat. Like someone pretending to be a kid. Like they were practicing it. I got scared and turned them off. Never touched them again. Until last October, when I found them in the basement buried in a box under some blankets. And guess what? One of them was still working. I turned it on for fun. Nostalgia, right? That night around 11:30, I heard static crackling from the walkie I'd left on my desk. Then a voice. "Hi, Lily." Same tone, same words. 15 years later. I froze. I stared at it for 10 seconds, thought it was a fluke, until it said something new. "I missed you." I turned it off and left it on the porch. But the next night it happened again. The other walkie, the one I hadn't touched, turned on by itself. This time I didn't just hear static, I heard knocking. 3 knocks, muffled, like they were inside the house but far away. Then the voice came through again. "I'm in your closet." I ran upstairs, ripped open my closet, nothing, no one. But on the inside of the door, scratched into the wood, were 3 words I'd never seen before. "Talk to me." I tried to forget about it, threw the walkies in the trash outside. I even took a melatonin and crashed early the next night. But at 2:03 a.m. I woke up to the dog barking like crazy. She was facing the hallway, growling. Then, from the darkness, I heard it again. Knock, knock, knock. Coming from downstairs, the front door. I looked through the peephole. No one there. I backed away, and that's when I heard it again. The walkie-talkie. Except it was in my room, buzzing softly under the bed. I don't know how it got there, and I swear I threw them out. But I picked it up, hands shaking, and the voice whispered, "Why'd you stop playing?" I finally told my parents everything. I begged them to let me leave early. They didn't believe me, but they agreed to let me go. 2 days later, after I was gone, my mom called. She was laughing nervously. "Hey, did you leave one of your little radios behind?" I froze. She said they found it in the basement closet, turned on, making noise. When she held it to her ear, she swore she heard a knock followed by a whisper. "Where's Lily?" I don't sleep with my closet door closed anymore, and sometimes even with everything powered off. I still hear faint static when I lie in bed, and then knock, 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 from inside the wall behind my headboard. Knock. My name is Trevor, and I used to think living alone was peaceful. That was before the knocking started. I moved into this apartment complex about a year ago in Henderson, Nevada. It's nothing special. Cheap rent, cracked parking lot, paper-thin walls. But it was close to work, and I didn't mind the noise. For a while it was normal. Until one Tuesday night in November. It was just past midnight. I was on my couch half asleep with a bag of chips in my lap and some random documentary playing in the background when I heard a tap, tap, tap. I thought nothing of it at first. Maybe pipes or the neighbors. But it kept happening. 3 taps every few minutes. Always coming from the wall behind my couch. The one that separates my unit from the empty apartment next door. I figured maybe the landlord had moved someone in without telling me. But that didn't make sense. The apartment next to mine was still vacant. I was sure of it. The blinds were still open and the place had no furniture. I'd peeked in through the window earlier that day. Still, I went to bed thinking maybe I was just overthinking. But the next night it happened again. Same time, around 12:15 a.m., knock, 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 3 dull hits against the shared wall. I turned down the TV and listened. Total silence. Then, another 3 knocks. So I knocked back, just out of curiosity. I expected silence, maybe I even hoped for it. But exactly 5 seconds later, something knocked back again. This time 4 times. I didn't sleep that night. Over the next few nights, the knocking changed. It started earlier, it grew louder. And then, it began moving. Not just from the wall behind the couch, but from inside the bedroom, above the ceiling, even under the floorboards. Always between midnight and 3 a.m. Always in groups of 3 or 4. Always in perfect rhythm. I reported it to my landlord. He brushed it off, said the building was old and settling. So I went next door one afternoon to check it out myself. The apartment was still empty. The lock was dusty. The windows were grimy. I even looked through the mail slot. No furniture, no lights, no sign of anyone living there. But what I saw inside chilled me. All over the walls were holes. Not big ones, just tiny round holes. Dozens of them, like someone had been tapping or drilling through the drywall from my side. That same night, I set up my phone with a voice recorder and left it running near the wall. What I caught still gives me nightmares. First, you hear the knocks, regular, steady. Then there's silence. Then a voice, just barely audible, a woman's voice, soft and whispering, "I'm close now." And then another voice, deeper, angry. "Don't answer her." I didn't sleep for the next 2 nights. Then it got worse. I came home one day and found something taped to my front door. A note torn from a yellow legal pad. It said, "Don't knock back." That's how she gets in. No signature, just those words. I asked around. None of the neighbors claimed to have left it. That same night I stayed up. No TV, no music, just silence. At exactly 1:03 a.m., the knocking started again. Knock, knock, knock from the bedroom wall, then the bathroom, then the ceiling. It was as if whatever was doing it was moving through the walls. Then it stopped, and my phone buzzed. An unknown number. The message said, "Knock, knock." I didn't respond. I just stared at the phone, heart pounding. Then, I heard my front door unlock. I live alone. No roommates, no spare key given out. I grabbed a knife and crept to the door, but it was still latched from the inside. The knob slowly turned like someone was trying to open it. From my side. But when I flung it open, there was no one there. Just a new note on the floor. "You heard me." I moved out 2 days later. Left furniture, dishes, everything. I didn't care. But here's the worst part. 2 months after I left, I got a call from my old landlord. He sounded shaken. He asked if I ever noticed weird sounds in my apartment. I told him yes. Then I asked why. He told me the new tenant, a woman in her 30s, had filed a police report. She said someone kept knocking on her walls at night and whispering through the air vents. Said it knew her name. They found her 2 days later, sitting in the corner of the living room, eyes wide open, fingertips completely worn down, like she'd been knocking back for hours. On the walls, written in smears of blood and dust, was one sentence: "It comes if you answer."